is going to show you the International 1020 System of Measurement for EEG electrode placement. I have a red china marker and a paper tape measure and my lovely mannequin head here to demonstrate today. The first thing you want to do in starting with the 1020 System of Measurement is identify your landmarks. The first landmark that we're going to identify is called the nason, and it is right at the crease of the nose and the forehead. Okay. The next landmark point is called the inion, and the inion can be found by feeling the back of your patient's head and feeling for that big bump, or what we call the occipital protuberance. So right at the base of the occipital protuberance is your next landmark, which is called the inion. My mannequin head doesn't have an actual occipital protuberance, so I've made a mark where I'm pretending that the occipital protuberance is. This is going to give me my first point of contact for my first set of measurements. Okay. I'm going to take my paper tape measure and I'm going to place it on my first landmark, which was the nason, and I'm going to hold it there, and I'm going to come directly back across the head, and I'm going to stop at the inion, which if it was a real person, it would be where I am feeling with my fingers for the occipital protuberance. On my mannequin head, which is about average for an adult female, I have 35 centimeters. Okay. So without moving the tape measure, I'm going to make my first mark. Without moving my tape measure, I'm going to begin with the first set of marks. Okay. My first measurement point is going to be 10% of the total distance from the nason to the inion. So again, my measurement was 35 centimeters. So 10% of 35 is 3.5. So my first mark is going to be at 3.5 above the nason. Here's a trick when doing measuring and marking. If you keep your tape measure in position, and when you make your marks, be sure to mark through the tape measure. If we mark on the left or the right, then our mark is no longer accurate, okay? Because where I want to be is right in the middle of the tape measure. So as I mark, I'm going to move my tape measure and mark through the tape measure, okay? So I'm gonna come up 10% of 35, which is 3.5. So here's my 3.5 marker on the tape measure, and so I'm going to just move directly through it. See, if I had only marked on the left or the right of the tape measure, then I would have been off. My next measurement moving backward is 20%. Okay. So my initial measurement, again, was 35 centimeters, and so I went 10%, which was 3.5, and now I'm gonna go 20%, which is 7. So I'm going to put my tape measure on the second mark that I've made here, and I'm gonna hold it in place in the plane, and now I want to come 7 centimeters back. So I find my 7 mark, and then again, I want to move through the tape measure. If I went on the left or the right, it would not be accurate placement. So I'm going to go 20% again back, and so I put the tape measure on the mark. I'm going to find my 7 and mark straight through. And I'm going 20% back again. Found my 7, marking through the tape measure, and 20% again. And I found my 7 and marking through. Now, if I've done my math correctly, from the last mark that I've made down to that inion spot should be the remaining 10% of 3.5. And it is. So from this last mark that I made to my fake inion is 3.5 centimeters. So again, those measurements from the nason to the inion was 10%, 20%, 20%, 20%, 20%, and then the remaining 10%. Our next set of landmarks is what we call the preauricular crease, which is a little crease at the ear. So we can make little marks there. And again, that's called the preauricular crease. So now I'm going to measure from ear to ear, or preauricular crease to preauricular crease. I'll put my tape measure there. But very important, when I make this measurement, I want to make sure that I'm taking my tape measure through that center line that I've already made. Just like that. And now I've gotten 35 centimeters. Okay. So again, we're going to do the exact same set of measurements. We're going to start with 10%. So we're going to go 10% up from the preauricular crease, and then we're going to go 20% all the way around to that final 10% to the next preauricular crease. And again, we want to make sure that we're using the plane of our tape measure to guide us. If I do not take my tape measure through this mark, then I could end up in a wrong position if I have my tape measure too high or too low. So we want to let the tape measure guide you on your planes by following the marks that you've already made. Okay. So I'm going to put my tape measure right on my preauricular crease, and I want to carry it through my mark that I've made here through the center of the head. Now my first mark is going to be 10% up. So again, I got 35 centimeters from preauricular crease to preauricular crease. So I need 10% of 35, which is 3.5. And again, I want to mark through the tape measure. So you use the tape measure to get your mark, but then move it out of the way so that you can mark through it. Holding the tape measure on that mark and making sure again that we're going through that mark we made here, I'm going to keep going at 20%. So I'm back to 7 centimeters. So there's my 7 mark. If I just mark right here, I'm going to be too far forward. My mark really needs to be right where the tape measure is. So I'm going to mark through the tape measure. So there's my 7 mark. I'll move the tape measure and mark right through it. And again, we're going 20%. And now I'm going to get my first intersection mark. Okay, so because I want to go through that line. So I'm going to put my tape measure there and carry through my mark, and right at the 7 mark, 7 centimeter, I'm going to make a mark, and I have my first intersection point of my first actual electrode placement of CZ. Okay. So now I want to keep going, and I'm using my tape measure to guide me. So I'm following this right down to the preauricular crease on the right-hand side. If I'm over here or back here, it's not going to be accurate. So I'm going to go right down here and find 7 centimeters for another 20%, and I'll carry that through. Now we're going to keep going, 20% again. There's my 7. And if I did my math correctly, from this mark to the preauricular crease should be 10%. It should be 3.5. Right on. So again, that measurement was preauricular crease to preauricular crease. We have 10% of the total measurement from the preauricular crease up to the first mark. And then we'll go 20%, 20%, 20%, 20%, and then the final 10% down to the next preauricular crease. And we made our first intersecting mark. Our next set of measurement is the circumference. Now to get our circumference, we need to actually go ahead and make a mark that's not already existing. I'm going to make an intersecting mark on this horizontal line that I've made on the forehead. And to do that, I'm very simply going to take my China marker from the tip of the patient's nose and just follow it right up and make a cross. Now we want to take a circumference measurement. And so I'm going to place the tape measure on that mark that I've just made and go all around the head. Okay. And so back to the mark, I made 54 centimeters. Okay. Now the circumference measurements are pretty easy because it's just 10% all the way around. 10% of 54 is 5.4. The only tricky part on the circumference is the initial marks of FP1 and FP2, because those are going to be here on the left-hand side and right-hand side of that center we made. And it's actually going to be 5% to one side and 5% to the other. So we have a little bit more math to do, okay? So my total circumference was 54 centimeters, and I need 5% of that. So 5% of 54 is 2.7. So what I want to do is put my tape measure right on the mark that I just made, and I want to go 2.7, and then we're going to mark through the tape measure to this side and 2.7 to the other side, because what I need to get is a total of 10%. So if I go 2.7 on this side, now I have my marks. It's probably some of the most challenging math of the entire 1020 system, or maybe it's just for me. Now we can simply just carry this line across as well here. And now we have our FP1 and our FP2 placements. Now the rest of the circumference is pretty easy because we're going to just go 10% all the way around. We already did the hard part by getting 5% of that. So now I'm going to go 10% all the way around. And again, my total circumference was 54 centimeters, so I'm just simply going to go 5.4 all the way around. If I line up my tape measure right there on my FP2 mark, again, I want to use the marks that I've already made to help guide my tape measure and create the planes for me so that I know I'm on the right track and making marks accurately. So I'm going to use this mark here as to guide my tape measure and hold it in place. And so I'm going to come across to 5.4. So there's my 5.4. I want to mark through the tape measure. Okay. And then I'm going to keep going, using those marks to guide my tape measure. So 5.4 is just 10% all the way around. And look, I have another intersecting mark. I've just made T4. Okay. Then I'm going to hold it here, and I want to use this mark on the back of the head to guide my tape measure. Again, if I'm not doing that, then I'm going to be too high or too low, and the marks are going to be inaccurate. So use your marks to guide you. So I'm going to hold the tape measure there in place. I'm going to find 5.4 and mark through my tape measure, and I'm going to keep going through my tape measure here. Some texts like to go all the way around. I like to, once I get to the back, I go to the other side and keep going that way. Either way is correct. So now I'm gonna start on this FP1 mark and line my tape measure up with this mark here and find 5.4, mark through the tape measure. Keep going, lining things up, 5.4, and now I have another intersecting mark. I'm going to use the lines that I've already made in the back now to guide my tape measure so that I'm not too high or too low. My line right here. 5.4. And 5.4. Just carry my last occipital line across. Okay. So again, the circumference measurement around the head was 54 centimeters, and how we got our distances was it's 10% all the way around, but we have to go 5% on each side of our center mark to obtain FP1 and FP2. So again, we'll start in the middle and go 5% to one side, 5% to the other for a total of 10%. And then it's 10% all the way around the head. And the next measurement that we're going to do is this frontal plane here. Okay. So we're going to go from our F7, and see at this point I need to make this mark here so I know where to put my tape measure, and I'm just going to follow this natural plane that I've made already, and I can cross with my tape measure here. I'm lining it up with this mark and this mark here. I have F7 now, and I have a spot for my tape measure. So I'm going to go from F7 through FZ. and down to my base spot of F8. And I got 20 centimeters. Now these measurements are going to be 25% across. So it's essentially divided by 4. So 20 centimeters, 20 divided by 4 is 5. Okay. So I need to go 5 centimeters from this mark, which will equal 25%. And so there's my 5 centimeter mark, and I'm going to mark through my tape measure. And now I'm going to go 25% again, and there's my 5. And remember, I'm going to mark through your tape measure, and now I have my intersecting point for FZ. I'm still going 25%, which is 5 centimeters. And then 25%, 5 centimeters, and I get my F8 intersection point. So again, that was 25% of the total measurement, which was 20 centimeters. Now I'm going to do almost the same measurement on the back side, from here all the way to here, T5 to T6. To get this mark here on the side before I place my tape measure, I can just create the plane by using the marks that I already have. There we go. Okay. So just like that frontal plane, I'm going to go from T5 through PZ and down to T6. Same as we did on the front. And this is also going to be a 25% measurement. Okay. So my total was 20 centimeters again. It's normally going to be a little bit larger on a real human head, but for this mannequin, it is 20 centimeters. And again, I need 25% to find my markings. So 20 divided by 4 is 5. So I know that my next marking is going to be at 5 centimeters. So there's my 5. I'm going to mark through the tape measure. Okay. And now I want to go from this mark through my PZ mark at 5 centimeters. Okay. And now I have PZ. I'm going to keep going down here, 25%, which is 5 centimeters. Mark through the tape measure and come down for my final marking, or my final marking of this set of measurements here at 5 centimeters for another intersecting point. Now we're almost done. We have 2 sets of measurements left. Okay. So we see we need intersecting points here on each side. So for this measurement, I'm going to go from FP1 all the way down to O1. Okay. But I want to make sure I take my tape measure through these existing marks. Again, we want to use the tape measure to allow us to create a plane so that we're staying on the right course. So we're going to line up the tape measure at FP1 and hold it and go through the marks that we've already made all the way down to O1. Okay. And I got 24 centimeters. So this set of measurements, again, is 25%. We're going to go 25% all the way back. So 24 divided by 4 is 6. So my measurement points from FP1 back down is going to be 6 centimeters. So tape measure at FP1 intersection, and I want to go through this mark so that I can intersect it at 6 centimeters. Okay. And same thing going back, 25%, it's going to be 6 centimeters. So there's 6. If I move my tape measure, I now have those intersecting marks. 25% going back again. Move the tape measure, and now we have all of our intersecting marks. So again, from FP1 all the way down to O1, using our existing markings, was 24 centimeters. And we get our measurements by going 25% all the way back. So 25% of 24 centimeters was 6 centimeters. So I went 25% here, 25%, 25%, 25%. We're gonna do the exact same thing on the right-hand side. I'm gonna go from FP2 down through my existing markings, all the way down to O2, and again, 24 centimeters. 25% back, the same as the other side, okay? So we're gonna go 6 centimeters. I'm gonna move my tape measure and cross through my existing mark for my intersecting point. Line up the tape measure, go through my mark, and 25%, which is 6 centimeters, make my intersecting mark. And my final mark, 6 centimeters here, crossed. And that is the International 1020 System of Measurement.